Hi there, customer experience community. This is Dominic. Welcome to another video. Today, we're going to look at how to automate repetitive processes in your business while still maintaining good customer experience. We're going to look at that through the lens of Ultimate AI. And Ultimate AI is a virtual agent platform. It's one of the most powerful that I came across on the interwebs. So I'm very excited for you to see this demo. Now, what we need to keep in mind is we need to have a virtual agent platform, which is Ultimate, and then we need to connect it to a chat system. Well, in our example, the chat system is going to be Zendesk, specifically Zendesk Sunshine Conversations. Now, what is Zendesk Sunshine Conversations? It's an advanced bot flow from Zendesk that you can leverage in combination with Ultimate. We're going to look at from two perspectives, from the customer experience and how engaging the customer experience is. I love how engaging it is and not boring. So that's why I am so excited for you to see this example. And we're also going to look at the techie stuff, like the admin experience and how that looks like. I know you guys like to see the techie stuff too, because there's some geeks out there and you enjoy this stuff as much as I do. So enjoy. So without further ado, James, I would like to hand over the mic to you to see what we're going to look at today. Thank you for joining.
All right, great. My pleasure. Yeah, I'm James. I'm a solution consultant at Ultimate, so I spend a lot of time looking at how different kinds of processes can be automated, especially via chat or other support automations. So we're going to look at a couple examples today. First, what does it look like for an end user, and what does that experience like? And then how do you actually set this up and make it possible behind the scenes using Ultimate as the tool? So what I've got here, this is just a mock-up of an e-commerce store. As you can imagine, there are typical kinds of issues and requests that e-commerce companies get through support. We're going to look at two of them through chat. So down here, this is a chat widget. On the Ultimate side, what we use is the Sunshine Conversations widget from Zendesk. That's what we're seeing here. And I'm just going to start the chat by saying, hi. And what we get is a greeting from a virtual assistant. In this case, I'm a customer that it knows, so it can greet me by name. And then here we have some tips about how to get started, what I can ask. So I'm just going to first type that in. What can I ask you? And this is where you can provide sort of a guidepost. These are the kinds of questions that this virtual assistant can answer. That can be a good idea just so customers know what can I expect this virtual assistant to even be able to do. So I can ask it about where's my order, change of delivery dates, etc. But let's say, for example, I don't speak English. I can ask it, do you speak German, for example? And we could change the language so that I can ask it questions now in German, but since this demo is for English, I'll go back to English. So now we've got English again. We can ask, so we could click those buttons to start different flows, different interactions, but we can also just ask in free form. So I'm going to say I have a very simple problem first, which is I can't log into my account. I know that I have things that I want to check on, but I can't log in. So this is one of those typical kinds of issues that generally has an easy resolution. I can reset my password. So this is where you could send the link. This is the link you go to reset your password. But let's say I tried that and it doesn't work. I could report that and we can identify that, continue the flow and say, okay, here are the typical steps for troubleshooting when that doesn't work. Maybe the password reset went to spam and maybe the link expired. So these are different things that I can check, and let's say, yes, one of them worked for me. But I have another question, which is, I want an update on my order status. So I'm still waiting. I'm wondering where my order is. And this is where we can start a flow that's a little bit more intricate, right? We need to look up information from other systems to give a useful answer, instead of one that just says, this is typically how long it takes for orders to ship. So first it asks me for information that it needs to complete this. So I need to give it an order number. That's 5 digits. And this is where it can look up that order. So here it says, all right, here's the order, here's the estimated delivery date, and here are the details. Here's what's included in the order. So it can display what's included in a carousel, as it's called. And then if I don't have any of the questions, I can say, got it. And then we can also ask for a sort of CSAT. How is this experience? That's something you can use over time to track how well the bot is actually answering your customers' questions and solving their issues. So that's sort of the end result. What you could do, let's take a step back and see what does it take to actually make this possible. So I'm just going to switch to this tab. This is now the ultimate dashboard, and this is where we can set up these different interactions. What we're looking at here, this is an overview of what's called intents, or the categories of customer requests. And the ones that you can see here, these are not necessarily the useful ones, but they're important for having conversational AI so that the bot can understand when somebody says hello, or that doesn't work, or yes or no, etc. And the principle behind this is each of these intents is trained with expressions or examples of how customers might say this. So if we look at greeting, I can see here under expressions, these are all ways somebody might greet the bot. And this is what the AI uses to learn all the different ways somebody might greet. And then you can use those, of course, exact expressions or something similar to it, and the AI understands. What we need for those two examples is one intent about a customer asking about login issues and one about order status. We could build those from scratch and say, let's create an intent and we'll add training examples one by one. But there are two other ways we could do it. And one we'll use today. This is with what's called the content marketplace. This is where we have pre-trained intents. So we have one already for login problems where we can see, all right, this is customers asking about resetting password or not able to get into their account. And we already have 50 ways somebody can express this. And so we can go ahead and add this
Oh, this
pre-trained.
is super useful. I love this, the fact that you have done all the work behind, because usually one of my questions was how long does it take to train a bot, but you're already answering, like you already have these pre-built, and I just maybe add a few more variations if I so need, right? Is that correct?
Exactly. So you definitely want to, over time, see how do your customers ask this question. They might phrase it slightly differently, and then you can add to that intent. Exactly.
Excellent.
Let's just get the other one for order status. So we'll add that one as well. So this is one way you can do it. And for a lot of these very common use cases, you'll probably find the intent here as a pre-trained intent. But one thing that we do with almost every customer is we also analyze historical interactions. And we can get some typical or some support metrics, like what's the automation potential, what effect would it have? But a big part of it is identifying what are those intents. So we cluster historical interactions. There's that graphical view, but we have a list view here. So let's say, oh, looks like you have a lot of people asking about scheduling a pickup. And if we go here, we can see these are the ways that your customers have asked this question based on your historical chats or even emails. And then we can use this to start training an AI model that's really specific to how your customers talk. So it's a way to really do it in bulk. Instead of sitting there adding one by one, this is how I think customers would ask this question. We can see how did customers actually ask this question previously. So that can be quite useful, especially for unusual niches or areas.
And just to
So
be
here we have,
clear, sorry to interrupt, James. And just to be clear, the automation reports is something that you can do on your own to get, let's say, off the ground to get started. Is that right?
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
you can import directly from CRMs like Zendesk, or we can just import historical chat transcripts. Exactly. But I'm going to just, here we have our AI models. I'm just going to click train here. So this will train a new model with these new intents that we've added. So it'll take a few minutes. In the meantime, what we can do is configure what happens when these intents are triggered. So I'm going to start with the simpler example, the login problems. Now, because we added this from the content marketplace, it already starts with a pre-configured reply as well. So that's what we have here, the English reply. Quite simple, just a text reply. But what we want is to have a dialogue, a back and forth. So I'm just going to switch it to dialogue mode. And now we can start building out a flow that should be triggered when somebody says, I can't get into my account. So here's where we can first configure that first answer the bot gives. So we could say, oh no. And we'll just say, it usually helps to reset your password. So that's the first thing that the bot will say. And we should follow that up with sending a link, number one. And so what we can do is click the plus here. And so I want to add a visitor message or an interaction coming from the visitor. And there are a number of things that we can do. We could add buttons that are clickable. But in this case, we want to add a link. And so the link text can be something like reset password. And this is where we would add the URL. I'm just going to add Google as a URL. And I'll click publish. And now this is already live, this version of the dialog. So I'm sending a reset password link. If you remember in the example, though, what I responded with as a user was that didn't work. So the reset password link, somehow it didn't actually work. And what you can do is add that kind of catch into the dialogue as well. So we might say we want to also recognize when a certain intent is predicted at a point in the dialogue. So we can say, if at this point in the dialogue I say that didn't work, we can catch that and then decide what the response should be. So now we can say, if that doesn't work, here's what the bot will say next. And that was, check your spam folder. And then there was something about expiring, but I'll leave that out. So check your spam folder.
Sorry to interrupt. I do have a small question here. So this is very interesting and very exciting. So I recognize the fact that in this logic there is the if condition, which is amazing, which is not something that you can find in many places. So I'm very excited about that. Now, about the intent predicted, does this translate into, so if the intent was accurately identified, does that mean that I don't ask like this is not what I was looking for, something? So this means that I'm still engaged in the same intent. Is that how you would see it, or how it works?
Yeah, so this would mean when somebody says that didn't work at this point in the dialogue, we shouldn't trigger a different intent, but it should be used as part of this interaction, right? To not sort of break the flow, but to be used as part of the flow, if that makes sense.
It does, and that's why I like the fact that it's so smart, the way that it's thought out. So yeah, very cool.
Okay, great. All right, so check your spam folder. One good way to end these interactions. So we've come to the end of what we would expect the bot to be able to do. We provided two sort of typical solutions. And we can ask for confirmation. Did that help? So did that fix my issue? And this is where we can say, no, still need help, or yes, all set, for example. Now, these would be buttons that would be displayed and you can click on. But in our experience, even when you display these nice buttons, often people don't actually use them. They keep typing in because that's what their hands are on the keyboard already, right? They're not going to their mouse to start clicking. And so what we can do is add a condition that says, at this point, somebody says no, or the intent negative is recognized. So they might say nope, or it didn't, something like that, that's recognized as being negative, and that would still trigger the same flow. We can do the same thing over here and say intent predicted affirmative.
That's what I like you guys so much, because you think about these things. Yeah, of course, you are on your keyboard. You're not maybe on your mouse. So you want to keep going with the keyboard. Yeah, very cool. Sorry, I
Yeah.
keep interrupting and saying very cool.
No, no, that's great. So if there's an issue, right, I still need help. This is where you can say at this point, let's hand it over to an agent. One moment while an agent joins, and we can say, all right, should this forward to an agent in live chat? So somebody's going to come right now and help you out in real time? Or is this something where we might send an email to another system if the people who would be working on this aren't working, let's say, in Zendesk in this case? Or do we want a custom escalation where it could go to a ticket that you'd follow by email as well, but in Zendesk? So depending on time of day or how your support agents work, you can do the escalations in different ways.
But this is in a way agnostic to the CRM you're using, right? What you're using for your chat system. If I would use, for example, Freshdesk, if I would use, I don't know, a customer or something else, IT, I don't know, let's say ServiceNow or whatever, I'd be able to forward in there, right?
So the one that is agnostic is the send an email. So we could send it to any system to create a ticket on behalf of this user, for example. But the forward to an agent, where it is going to an actual live chat, that depends on our integrations and where we're integrating into.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. And if everything is all set, we can say, glad to hear it, and then offer maybe that CSAT flow that we saw at the very end. I'm just going to click publish changes. And the last thing that we need to do, since this dialog is now ready, is set it as active. So up to now, if I asked, I can't log in, it wouldn't have triggered this intent because we don't have any active replies. But now we have an active reply, and so we can respond with the login problems. Now let me just double check that the AI model is rebuilt and ready. Okay, yeah, so the second one is there, and we can already test it out. And I'll just test it here. This is our built-in test bot. So I'll say I can't get into my account. All right, so this is where we can see it triggered that intent that we just set up and the flow that we just saw. Here's the option to reset my password. I can say that didn't work with a little typo. And it continues the flow, and here we have the options that we saw. So I can say, nope. It recognizes that, and now it does the escalation. Since we're not connected, it's just our test, but it's not actually going to another system, but this is a way that you can also test. Is the logic working the way you expect it to work?
Fair enough. Yeah, that makes sense. Excellent.
All right. Now, I want to show just a little bit how you do it in the more sophisticated, more intricate one. We won't build it out completely because there's a bit more to it. I'm just going to get this order status example. And first, we'll need to, for example, ask for the information that we need. But let me show you what this actually looks like. So we would connect to an API integration node. Now, the idea is the code and all the setup would already be done. And then you can use this node in a dialog to say, at this point, I want to get the order status. And this is what the structure could look like. We generally build these custom for each use case and for each system we want to connect to. But here what we say is, all right, first, this dialog needs to collect parameters, and it needs to specifically collect an order number. And so this is what we would set up over here, and you can set up in a somewhat clever way. One thing that's really useful is to add an entity where you define what does an order number look like, usually using a regular expression. So you might say it's always a 5-digit number, or it's a 10-digit number starting with DE, et cetera, et cetera.
I can put, so
Um,
if I can put, for example, personalize, for example, SKW. It starts with SKW. Each one, that's my, let's say, conventional way of writing orders. It starts with SKW, and then it has three more numbers, three digits. Is that,
exactly.
yeah? Okay,
Exactly. And
nice.
so you can define that, and then you can recognize when that's what the customer responds with.
Hmm.
And if not, you could say, if they respond with anything else, you can say, that doesn't look quite right. And then ask them to enter it again or try again. This, you want to be careful because you can end up with infinite loops. And if you try to set up a flow, that would end up with an infinite loop, something like this. That doesn't look quite right. Please give me your order number, right? Where the customer could get stuck. You'll get a warning from our system that says you've just set up an infinite loop, potentially. So you won't actually even be able to save it if you try to create a dialogue like that, which is quite useful.
So if I were to be stuck in an infinite loop, automatically the bot doesn't, or changes here, the settings here don't let me do it, right?
It won't let you save, exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice, nice.
You can save a draft, but you can't publish.
Hmm.
Exactly. So typically what we would suggest is continuing, maybe ask twice. And then if they still respond to something that isn't an order number, then maybe forward to an agent or say, can I help you with something else? Because it might be that they're saying this isn't what I'm asking.
Mm, fair enough. Okay.
But once we are able to then do the API call, we have the information we need. We can provide different answers based on the response from the API. So let's say the order is shipped. We can provide, wait, zoom in again. We can provide the answer here, and we can even embed information coming from the API. So if we have the shipping date and the tracking URL, we can add that here.
These parameters are dynamic, right? I can add my own if I so please, right?
It just depends on, yeah, what the API is sending back. So that's why it's
Okay.
generally custom. So if you have specific information that you'd be sending back, then we can add it here. In the example that we saw before, the actual items of the order were displayed in a carousel. So that's how what we can do here, we can add the carousel. This version would be static. We enter what's the URL for the image, the title, the description that we want to show. But in this case, we would want it to be dynamic and only display exactly what the API responds with as the contents of the order, for example. So that's one thing that we can do with the dynamic carousel. And the last thing that I'll show that's quite useful, we might say, let's say the order was placed, right? It hasn't even been processed yet. And we know that we can get back from the API if there's some kind of delay in the system. And so we have an additional parameter that we can check, and we can use a conditional block to say, all right, if the system delay is true, or if the response we get back is number of days. So if we say if the system delay is greater than 2, so there will be a delay longer than 2 days, we can provide a specific response. So this is where you can also get really clever about what responses you send or what experiences you give by using these conditional blocks.
Wow, excellent. So, if it's all right, so I would like to just one quick question ask about what dynamic carousel means exactly. I still have a bit of I'm stuck there for a little bit. I still want to and understand exactly what it is when you say that.
Yeah, so it's basically this example where I asked, where's my order? I gave my order number, and it responded with the current status and with, here's what is in your order. So
Mm,
it's some shoes, basically.
okay, okay.
And it's dynamic because it would be different depending on the order that I'm asking about. And it's also possible to set up a static carousel with fixed images and options that everybody would see the same thing. And this way, everyone sees something different depending on what they're asking about.
Okay, cool. Nice. Makes sense now. Thank you for clarifying.
Sure. But that's how, basically from beginning to end, you can set up these experiences. We have a couple of tools that help you keep track of how well the bot is doing, and I'll just show you one example because it works with this very new bot that we're looking at, and that's the conversation logs, where you can see for every interaction, here's what happened. So in this case, the one that we just tried in the test bot, we can see the visitor said, I can't get into my account, and I can check here, all right, this was recognized with 99.6% confidence that it had to do with login problems. This is where you can track how well is the bot understanding in a really detailed way. And you can also see, for example, here, what reply was actually used. So if you ever see something that doesn't quite make sense or it's not what you would expect to happen, this is where you can really track in a lot of detail what happened and why in a specific interaction.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah, but that's basically it for getting started. Is there anything else that you're wondering about?
Yeah, so in here, while we're here, my question would be, I would be able to see this dialogue and the history of it in Zendesk, for example. I would be able to see this interaction since it's done with Sunshine Conversations. I'd be able to see it in Ultimate's dashboard in here, but I'd be able to see it in Zendesk. Is that is that a that ring true or not?
Yeah, so with Zendesk Sunshine Conversations, you don't see it in Zendesk until a ticket is created. And a ticket is created either when it's escalated to an agent, then the ticket is created. But we also have the option, and I'll just show you here, to say, let's add an action. When the chat is ended, and we'll say we're connecting to Sunshine. When the chat is ended, we want to create a ticket in Zendesk. So then you can have a record of really every customer interaction recorded in
I
Zendesk as
see.
well.
Okay, it makes sense. It makes sense because actually it makes more sense to keep it in the ultimate dashboard because that's where you do the training of the bot anyway, and it's more important for it to live there than in Zendesk because you don't necessarily have any use for it. Let's say not that I can think of right now. Probably you do, but it's more important to live in Ultimate's dashboard.
Well, one thing that can be useful, and I'll show you here, is you might want to say, all right, every time we have a specific kind of intent that is triggered, we want a record for that in Zendesk as well, where we say, this was an interaction about login problems. So by adding this tag here, when the ticket is created, it will also have that tag. And that way you can have in Zendesk Explorer, Zendesk Analytics, you can see how many requests had to do with login problems, how many were needed to go to an agent versus being handled by the bots. You can have that detail in Zendesk as well.
Yeah, that's very useful because obviously any business needs oversight of what customer service requests are coming into the system. So you'd be able to, make proper business decisions, like train your agents, like maybe train the bot better.
Or ask
Like
the
I
product
don't know
team to fix something.
exactly, like, or maybe somebody's not doing a good job with delivery, and you want to know maybe if your delivery partner can be, you know, uh, let know of this of let's say delays. Okay,
Exactly.
makes sense.
Yeah.
I think the question that I have right now is a bit more, let's say, general, and that is how long you'd think that, or based on previous experience, how long training a bot would take for to make it function, let's say, to be as productive as it can be.
I mean, in terms of the training and creating a model, it generally doesn't take that long just because we have the content marketplace and the automation explorer to, identify and quickly train that initial model. What typically takes longest is the dialogues and the flows. And it's less, building it. As you saw, we did it pretty quickly, but it's thinking of what are the business rules that we want the bot to follow, the questions it should ask, what should it clarify, what would a user probably do at different points, or what would they typically ask about. And it's often that almost that mental exercise that takes the longest to figure out, okay, what do we actually want this bot to do? And the other part is setting it up in a way that provides a really good customer experience. Because even with Ultimate, you can set it up in a way that really isn't that helpful and you know doesn't provide a good experience. So also knowing and learning those tricks of what should the bot be saying and doing at different points to help customers, that's the other part.
Okay, I understand because this is not a, let's say, a pill of a solution, right? It's not a magic wand that you can waver and it's done, right? It takes constant
Right.
iteration to make it shine. And like anything, actually, if you put in the effort to make it work well and give meaningful customer experiences, then you can get there, but through constant iteration. And as you said, uh, creating these clever let's say, escalations or deflections, or maybe understanding better what the customer's intent is and guiding them and not making it boring. And that's why actually I like the solution so much because it makes you feel like it's engaging. It makes you feel like it's clever, it's smart. It makes you maybe wonder, like, are they actually going to take over the
Mhm.
world a little bit, right? Because they have this if condition there and a bunch of other things which we've looked at, but I don't, they don't come to mind right now. But I think that's the biggest differentiator between, for example, what you get with the standard Zendesk bots, because I've worked with those quite a lot. The dialogue building looks somewhat similar, but it's lacking a bunch of functionality, which we see here, which actually makes the difference. So yeah, this is why I like the solution, and I wanted the audience to see it as well because I thought it was amazing.
All right, great.
Yeah, so that's it from my end. I don't have any other questions. If there's anything that maybe you feel that you've overlooked and you'd like to share, yeah, go ahead. If-
I mean, that was the main thing. I did just want to point out there's nothing that we can really see because this is such a new bot, but the other tools that you have for knowing how to maintain and update the bot is analytics, where you can see numbers and statistics on intents and how many need to go to an agent, that sort of thing, and a training center, which is where you can update and maintain the model itself and see how well it's understanding incoming requests. So we definitely focus on making this easy to use, so it's not intimidating, thinking about AI and how do I know what it's doing. We try to make that as transparent as possible in the dashboard.
Mhm. Okay. Okay, excellent. Then, yeah, from my end, I'm happy to have seen the experience from a user perspective, which seems very engaging and cool. Actually, I like it because it's cool. And then in the admin, I'm not obviously you know this much better, and I asked a bit of maybe dumb questions because I don't know how to do it. So yeah, that's why I'm happy to have had you here to show us a little bit to guide us because I know this is valuable. um, this is what I've come to and to see that people do appreciate if they see how things are built. Because yeah, it helps them get closer to the goal, which is giving meaningful customer experiences and keeping the audience engaged.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, cool. So then, James, thank you so much for doing this exercise with me. I enjoyed it very much, and I'm sure the audience will as well. And so yeah, yeah, we'll be in touch. We're connected on Slack. So
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah, thank you so much, and yeah, have a beautiful day today.